The warning lights flashed red across the command center of Station Alpha 7. Commander Zethkar pressed his crystal hands against the control panel, watching the tactical display with growing fear. The green dots that showed friendly ships were disappearing one by one. The red swarm of enemy vessels grew larger with each passing hour. "How many ships have we lost?" Zethkar asked his aide, Lieutenant Mordan. 63 cruisers, and over 200 fighters in the last day alone, Mordan replied, his voice shaking. "The Hivema are moving faster than we expected. They've broken through our outer defense line." Zethkar stared at the display. The Hivema were like a plague of insects, swarming across 3 star systems. Their bioships looked like giant beetles, with weapons that grew and changed during battle. Every time the coalition forces found a way to hurt them, the enemy adapted and became stronger. The coalition had tried everything. The Luxani had used their energy weapons to burn entire fleets, but the Hivema ships just grew thicker armor. The Nebulos had released toxic gas clouds, but the enemy learned to filter the poison. The Terran had built massive stone barriers in space, but the bioship simply ate through them. "Sir, we're receiving another distress call from the Kepler system," the communications officer announced. "They're requesting immediate evacuation. The Hivema have reached the inner planets." Zethkar felt his crystal body grow cold. The Kepler system had 5 billion people living on its worlds. If they fell, the enemy would have enough resources to build a fleet 10 times larger than what they already had. "Send a message to all coalition commanders," Zethkar ordered. "We need reinforcements. Every available ship, every trained warrior. This is our last chance to stop them." 3 days later, the replies came back. The same message from every system. No ships available, all forces engaged in defensive operations. Zethkar slumped in his command chair. The coalition was falling apart. Each species was pulling back to defend their own worlds. Nobody wanted to risk their ships in what looked like a losing battle. "Sir," Mordan said quietly, "there is one more option." "What option?" "We've contacted every member of the coalition. The humans, sir. They've been asking to join our military operations for months. We keep telling them they're not ready, that they need more training." Zethkar had almost forgotten about the humans. They were the newest species to make contact with the coalition. Their world was far away on the edge of known space. Most coalition members thought they were primitive. Their ships looked crude, made of metal instead of energy or living tissue. Their weapons were simple projectiles instead of advanced particle beams. "The humans have no experience with galactic warfare," Zethkar said. "What could they possibly do against the Hivema?" "Sir, they've been very eager to help. Their military commanders keep sending messages asking for a chance to prove themselves. Maybe desperation is better than nothing." Zethkar looked at the tactical display again. Another friendly ship had just disappeared. The red swarm was growing closer to the coalition's core worlds. "Send the message," he said finally. "Tell the humans we need warriors, not diplomats. If they want to fight, now is their chance." Captain Ryan Mitchell was drinking his morning coffee on the bridge of the USS Leviathan when the priority message came through. The ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Wilson, looked up from her console with surprise. "Captain, we're receiving a coded transmission from the Galactic Defense Coalition. It's marked as urgent." "Put it on the main screen, Wilson." The image of Commander Zethkar appeared, his crystal form flickering with the strain of long-distance communication. "Captain Mitchell, I am Commander Zethkar of the Coalition Forces. We require immediate military assistance. The Hivema invasion has overwhelmed our defenses. We need all available ships and personnel." Mitchell set down his coffee cup. For 6 months, Earth's military had been trying to get the coalition to take them seriously. Every offer of help had been politely refused. The aliens kept saying humans needed more time to understand galactic warfare. "How many ships do you need, Commander?" Mitchell asked. "Everything you can spare. The enemy is advancing on multiple fronts. Our defensive strategies are proving inadequate." Mitchell smiled. "Sir, humans don't really do defensive strategies. We'll need to know where the enemy is concentrated so we can hit them directly." There was a long pause. Zethkar's crystal form seemed to flicker more rapidly. You wish to attack them directly? But they outnumber our forces 3-1. That just means we know where to find them, Mitchell replied. I'll contact Earth Command immediately. How long do we have? Days, perhaps hours before they reach our core systems. After the transmission ended, Mitchell turned to his first officer, Commander Nicole Stevens. Contact Admiral Brooks. Tell her the Coalition finally wants our help. And Nicole, tell her to send everything we've got. Within hours, Admiral Catherine Brooks had assembled the largest human fleet ever deployed outside Earth's solar system. 3 destroyers, 2 heavy cruisers, and 5,000 Marines under Colonel Jake Harrison. The ships weren't pretty or advanced, but they were built for one purpose: winning wars. As the human fleet prepared to jump to Coalition space, none of them knew they were about to introduce the galaxy to a completely new way of thinking about warfare. They didn't know that every other species in the Coalition had evolved on peaceful worlds, where cooperation was more important than competition. They didn't know that the concept of a death world, a planet so dangerous that its creatures became living weapons, was something the galaxy had never seen before. The Coalition had asked for reinforcements. They thought they were getting another desperate species willing to throw ships at an impossible problem. What they were actually getting was something far more dangerous: predators who had spent millions of years learning how to kill efficiently. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes of a desperate coalition and the fury of a species that had never learned how to lose. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 4.2b, with a flash of blue light. Commander Zethkar watched from his station's observation deck as the crude metal ships appeared on his sensors. He had expected them to look primitive, but seeing them in person was still shocking. The human vessels looked like weapons built around engines, all sharp angles and gun ports. "Sir, the human ships are requesting permission to dock," reported Lieutenant Mordan. "They want to send a diplomatic shuttle. Grant permission, dock them at Bay 7. Zethkar made his way to the docking bay, bringing several other Coalition commanders with him. Captain Veltos of the energy-based Luxani floated beside him, his body crackling with nervous electricity. Commander Hasurak of the plant-like Florian species rustled her leaves anxiously. "I still think this is a mistake," Veltos said, his voice sounding like static. "These humans have no experience with space warfare. What can they possibly do that we cannot?" Before Zethkar could answer, the human shuttle landed with a heavy thud. The airlock opened with a hiss, and 3 humans stepped out. The first was a woman in a blue uniform with gold stripes on her shoulders. Behind her came a large male in different clothing, covered with pockets and straps. The third was a smaller female carrying some kind of electronic device. Every alien in the docking bay froze. The humans moved wrong. That was the only way Zethkar could describe it. They walked with a fluid grace that made his crystal form vibrate with alarm. Their eyes constantly scanned the room, noting exits and potential threats. Even standing still, they looked ready to spring into action. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Ashley Davis," the first human said, her voice steady and confident. "This is Marine, Sergeant Danny Rodriguez and Communications Specialist Lisa Turner. We're here to coordinate with your forces." Zethkar noticed that the human called Rodriguez kept his hand near a weapon on his hip. The movement seemed automatic, like breathing. Turner held her device in a way that could quickly become defensive. These weren't diplomats. They were warriors pretending to be diplomats. "Welcome to Station Alpha 7, Zethkar managed to say. "I am Commander Zethkar. These are my fellow officers, Captain Veltos and Commander Hessarak." The humans looked at each alien commander with focused attention. Davis nodded politely, but Rodriguez's eyes lingered on weapons and defensive positions. Turner was already scanning the room with her device, probably gathering intelligence. "Thank you for responding to our call for help," Zethkar continued. "The tactical briefing room is this way." As they walked through the station's corridors, other aliens stopped to stare. The human's presence affected everyone differently. The crystal-based Terron became very still, as if trying not to draw attention. The gaseous nebulos pulled their forms tighter together. Even the plant-like Florians seemed to wilt slightly. In the briefing room, Zethkar activated the tactical display. Red dots showed Hivema positions across 3 star systems. Blue dots marked coalition forces. The red vastly outnumbered the blue. "This is our current situation," Zethkar explained. "The Hivema have taken these systems here, here, and here. We've established defensive positions at these points. Our strategy is to hold these positions and slowly push them back." Colonel Jake Harrison appeared on the communication screen from the human flagship. He was a large man with gray hair and scars on his face. His eyes studied the tactical display with the same focused attention Rodriguez had shown in the docking bay. "Commander Zethkar," Harrison said, "where exactly are the enemy ships most concentrated? We'd like to hit them first." The alien commanders exchanged glances. Captain Veltos sparked nervously. "Colonel Harrison, those positions are heavily defended. A direct attack would be suicide." "Maybe for you," Rodriguez muttered under his breath. Davis shot him a warning look but didn't disagree. Harrison leaned forward on the screen. "Commander, we understand you've been fighting defensively. That's fine for preserving your forces, but we're not here to preserve forces. We're here to end this war." Esrock rustled her leaves in confusion. "But attacking their strongest positions? It makes no strategic sense. You'll lose ships unnecessarily." "Ma'am, with respect, we've been fighting wars for thousands of years," Harrison replied. "Sometimes the fastest way to end a fight is to hit the enemy so hard they can't hit back." Turner looked up from her scanner. "Commander Zethkar, could we see combat footage of the Hivema? We need to understand how they fight." Zethkar activated another display showing recorded battles. The Hivema bioships moved like living creatures, growing new weapons and armor during combat. Their tactics were aggressive and adaptable. As the footage played, the coalition commanders watched the humans with growing fascination. Davis's breathing had changed, becoming deeper and more controlled. Rodriguez's pupils had dilated, and his muscles had tensed slightly. Even Turner showed subtle changes in her posture. "Fascinating," whispered Dr. Kethen, the station's medical officer. "Their biological responses are changing. Increased heart rate, hormone fluctuations, enhanced sensory awareness. It's like they're preparing for combat just by watching." Harrison studied the footage intently. "These bioships, do they have any kind of central command structure?" "Yes, larger vessels coordinate the smaller ones," Zethkar replied. "Good. Kill the brain, the body dies." Harrison turned to Davis. "Commander, prepare the fleet for offensive operations. Target priority goes to command ships." Veltos crackled with electricity. "Colonel, you can't simply charge into their formations. The Hivema will overwhelm you with numbers." Harrison smiled, and every alien in the room felt a chill. It was the smile of a predator that had spotted prey. "Captain, my species didn't get to the top of our food chain by running away from bigger threats. We got there by being meaner, tougher, and more stubborn than anything else on our planet." He paused. "The Hivema think they're the apex predators in this galaxy. They're about to learn they're wrong." The briefing ended with the coalition commanders more worried about their new allies than their enemies. These humans didn't think like any species they'd ever met. They saw warfare not as a careful dance of position and resources, but as a problem to be solved through superior violence. As the humans returned to their shuttle, Zethkar realized the galaxy was about to change forever. The coalition had asked for reinforcements, hoping for more ships and soldiers. What they'd gotten were apex predators from a world that had taught them that the best defense was total annihilation of threats. The war was about to become very different. The first battle happened near Epsilon Ceti, where a Hivema swarm had trapped a coalition supply convoy. Commander Zethkar watched from his command ship as the human fleet approached the combat zone. He expected them to take position behind the coalition defensive line like any reasonable military force would do. Instead, the USS Leviathan and her escort ships accelerated directly toward the enemy swarm. "What are they doing?" Captain Veltos crackled with nervous energy. "They're heading straight into the middle of the Hivema formation." On the communication channel, they could hear the humans talking to each other. The translation software struggled with some of their words, calling them war songs and battle cries. The sounds were rhythmic and aggressive, unlike anything the Coalition forces had ever heard. Captain Mitchell's voice came through clearly. "All ships, weapons free. Let's show these bugs what Earth brings to the party." The human ships opened fire while still accelerating. Their weapons were simple, metal projectiles and explosive missiles, but they fired them in devastating quantities. The HFY bioships, used to energy weapons that they could adapt to, suddenly faced thousands of physical projectiles that simply punched through their armor. "Impossible," whispered Commander Husrock. "They're outnumbered 5-1, but they're not retreating." The USS Leviathan flew directly into the swarm, her guns firing in all directions. HFY ships exploded around her as her escort vessels followed, each one unleashing everything they had. The human ships moved like pack hunters, coordinating their attacks without any visible communication. Then something happened that made every alien commander stare in shock. The largest HFY bioship, a creature the size of a small moon, opened its docking bays. Boarding pods shot out toward the human vessels. This was a standard HFY tactic: overwhelm enemy ships with their warrior drones and capture them from the inside. The Coalition forces always retreated when this happened. HFY warriors were terrifying creatures, designed for close combat, in confined spaces. The humans did something different. They launched their own boarding pods. Are they insane? Veltos sparked wildly. They're boarding a HFY command ship? Sergeant Major Patricia Coleman led the first wave of human Marines into the bioship's organic corridors. The walls pulsed like living tissue, and the air was thick with alien chemicals. Behind her, 20 Marines moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready. The first HFY warrior they encountered was 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and acid-spitting mandibles. It screamed a challenge and charged at the humans. Coleman shot it twice in the center of mass, stepped aside as it fell, and kept moving without breaking stride. Her Marines flowed around the body like water around a rock. "Contact front!" shouted Corporal Mike Johnson as more HFY warriors appeared. The corridor filled with gunfire and alien screams, but something was wrong with the HFY. They fought with desperation instead of their usual tactical precision. The bioship's adaptation systems kept trying to counter the human weapons, but the Marines switched tactics too quickly. When the ship grew thicker armor, they used explosives. When it released poison gas, they put on masks. When it made the corridors smaller, they crawled. On the Coalition command ship, Dr. Kethen monitored the biological readings from both sides. "This is unprecedented," he reported to Zethkar. "The HFY are showing stress patterns I've never seen before. Fear responses, panic indicators." "That's impossible," Zethkar replied. "The HFY don't fear anything. They're perfect predators." "Not anymore," Kethen said quietly. "They've met something that hunts better than they do." The turning point came when the HFY deployed their terror drones. These biomechanical horrors were designed to paralyze enemies with fear. Their appearance alone had broken entire Coalition fleets. The drones emerged from the ship's walls, their forms shifting between different nightmare shapes. They emitted psychic screams designed to trigger every possible fear response. The Coalition forces immediately began requesting retreat orders. Some ships had already started pulling back. The human response was different. Lieutenant Kevin Barnes looked at the approaching terror drone and started laughing. "Hey, Sergeant, this thing looks like my ex-wife's mother." His squad joined in the laughter. Instead of fear, they showed amusement. The terror drones, designed to exploit panic responses, were completely useless against beings who found them funny. "All right, boys," Barnes called out. "Let's show these bugs what real nightmares look like." The Marines charged forward and the terror drones actually retreated. Captain Mitchell watched the battle from the Leviathan's bridge. Commander Stevens stood beside him, monitoring tactical displays. "Sir, the Coalition commanders are asking why we're risking so many ships," Stevens reported. "They want to know our casualty projections." Mitchell smiled the same predator smile that had chilled the aliens during the briefing. "Tell them we're not trying to minimize casualties. We're trying to maximize enemy casualties. There's a difference." The HFY command ship's biosystems began shutting down as Coleman's Marines reached the central nerve cluster. The massive creature that had been a ship screamed once and went dark. Around it, Smaller bioships lost coordination and began fleeing. In 3 hours, the human fleet had destroyed a HFY swarm that had taken the Coalition weeks to contain. They had done it by ignoring every rule of civilized warfare and fighting like the apex predators they were. As the battle ended, Commander Zethkar received damage reports from the human ships. Instead of the heavy losses he expected, the humans had lost only 2 fighters and suffered minimal damage to their larger vessels. "How is this possible?" he asked Captain Mitchell during the post-battle briefing. Mitchell's expression was serious. "Commander, we're not from a nice world. Earth taught us that there are only 2 types of creatures, predators and prey. We've been predators for so long that we've forgotten how to be anything else." He paused, looking at the tactical display where red dots were retreating across multiple systems. The HFY think they're the ultimate hunters because they've never met anything that hunts back. But they've never fought against a species that had to earn its place at the top of the food chain. Every day, for millions of years, something on Earth tried to kill us. We're still here. They're not. The Coalition commanders exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that they hadn't just gained allies. They had unleashed something that would change the nature of galactic warfare forever. The Deathworlders had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. News of the human victory at Epsilon Ceti spread through the galaxy faster than hyperspace communications. The HFY, who had never retreated from any battle, were pulling back from 3 star systems. Their bioships moved in tight formations, no longer the confident swarms that had terrorized the Coalition for months. Major Tyler Jackson studied the intelligence reports in his office aboard the USS Leviathan. The HFY were doing something their species had never done before. They were acting afraid. "Sir," said Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez, his intelligence officer, "we're getting reports from Coalition deep space monitors. The HFY are moving. They're breeding ships to the center of their territory. They're building defensive positions around their homeworlds." Jackson nodded. "They're protecting their young. That's basic survival instinct." Dr. Amanda Phillips, the fleet's chief medical officer, looked up from her analysis. "The psychological impact is spreading through their entire species. Our combat recordings are being transmitted throughout their network. They're sharing information about us like we're some kind of plague." "In a way, we are," Jackson replied. "They've never faced a species that fights to win instead of fighting to survive." 3 days later, Jackson presented his plan to the Coalition Command Council. The alien leaders gathered in the main briefing room, their various forms creating a strange assembly. Commander Zethkar's crystal body flickered nervously. Captain Veltos crackled with energy. Commander Hisrek's leaves rustled with anxiety. "Major Jackson," Zethkar began, "we're grateful for your success at Epsilon Ceti. With the HFY in retreat, we can begin planning our defensive strengthening." "Actually, Commander, I have a different proposal," Jackson said, activating the tactical display. "We're going to attack their primary breeding world." The silence in the room was absolute. Several alien commanders made sounds of distress. Captain Veltos's energy form flickered wildly. "That's impossible," Hisrak whispered. "The breeding world is in the center of their territory. It's protected by hundreds of bioships and orbital defense platforms. It's also where they're most vulnerable," Jackson replied calmly. "Every species protects its young. Take away their ability to reproduce and they'll surrender to save what's left." Dr. Kethen, the station's medical officer, spoke up. "Major, attacking a breeding world. It's considered a war crime by galactic law. No civilized species targets reproduction centers." Jackson's expression didn't change. "Doctor, on Earth, when an invasive species threatens an ecosystem, the first thing you do is eliminate their breeding grounds. It's basic ecological management." The concept was so alien to the Coalition leaders that they couldn't process it. Species that had evolved cooperation above competition couldn't understand the logic of total warfare. "You're talking about genocide," Feltos said, his voice filled with horror. "I'm talking about ending the war," Jackson replied. "The HFY started this conflict. They've killed billions of your people. This is how we stop them permanently." Commander Nicole Stevens joined the briefing via hologram from the human battle group. "Major Jackson is right. We've analyzed the HFY expansion patterns. They breed faster than we can kill them in conventional warfare. We need to cut the problem off at its source. Colonel Jake Harrison appeared on another screen, his scarred face serious. The assault force is ready. We have our best Marines prepared for ground operations. The HFY breeding world has a toxic atmosphere, but our people can handle it. Zethkar's crystal form was vibrating with stress. You're asking us to support an attack that goes against everything we believe about warfare. I'm asking you to win, Jackson replied. The coalition has been fighting defensively for months. Where has that gotten you? The HFY were days away from reaching your core worlds when we arrived. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, the coalition leaders agreed. They were desperate and the humans had proven their effectiveness. The assault fleet would launch within the week. The HFY breeding world was called Swarm Prime by Coalition intelligence. It was a nightmare planet covered in biofactories that produced millions of warrior drones. The surface was toxic, the atmosphere was poisonous, and the gravity was twice Earth normal. Perfect, said Sergeant Danny Rodriguez as he suited up for the assault. Reminds me of Detroit. The human assault force was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. While the coalition commanders watched from their safe command ships, human Marines, prepared to land on a world that would kill most species within minutes. The orbital battle was fierce. HFY bioships swarmed around the planet like antibodies attacking an infection. Commander Stevens led the naval assault, her ships punching through the defensive formations with brutal efficiency. Stevens to ground forces, she broadcast. We've cleared a landing zone. Window is 30 minutes before they can reorganize. Colonel Harrison's voice crackled over the comm. Understood. All units go, go, go. The landing pods hit the planet's surface like meteorites. The toxic atmosphere immediately began eating through the coalition equipment that had been adapted for human use. But the humans themselves seemed unaffected. Sergeant Major Patricia Coleman led her Marines through the biofactory complexes, her squad moving with deadly precision. The HFY defenders were confused and disorganized. They had never faced an enemy that could survive their world's environment. The gravity's not that bad, Coleman reported, and the toxic air just smells like home. The psychological impact was devastating. The HFY had thought their breeding world was impregnable because no other species could survive its hostile environment. They had never considered that somewhere in the galaxy was a species that had evolved on a world even more hostile than theirs. As the human forces advanced on the primary breeding centers, the HFY began transmitting surrender requests. Not just from the planet, but from their entire fleet throughout the galaxy. This is HFY Prime Commander Zakth, came the alien transmission. We request immediate cessation of hostilities. We will withdraw from all occupied territories. Major, Jackson stood in the ruins of a biofactory, watching his Marines destroy the breeding chambers. Tell them we'll accept surrender when they've evacuated every system they invaded. And tell them if they ever come back, we'll finish what we started here. The war was over. In less than a week, the humans had accomplished what the coalition couldn't do in months of fighting. They had taken the war to the enemy's heart, and won not through superior technology or numbers but through superior ruthlessness. As the human fleet prepared to return to coalition space, Dr. Phillips filed her final report. The HFY are exhibiting species-wide trauma responses. They're retreating to their furthest territories and showing no signs of aggressive expansion. The psychological impact of facing a true apex predator species has fundamentally altered their behavior. The galaxy had learned a new truth. There was always a bigger predator, and sometimes it came from a small blue world on the edge of known space. 3 weeks after the assault on Swarm Prime, Admiral Catherine Brooks arrived at Station Alpha 7 with the main human fleet. She had expected to find grateful allies welcoming Earth's newest military heroes. Instead, she found a galaxy that didn't know whether to thank humans or fear them. Commander Zethkar met her at the docking bay, but his crystal form seemed dimmer than before. Other coalition leaders stood behind him, keeping their distance from the human delegation. Admiral Brooks, Zethkar said carefully, welcome to coalition space. Your forces have achieved remarkable success. Brooks noticed the hesitation in his voice. Behind the commander, she could see alien civilians moving away from the human Marines. Even the station's security forces looked nervous. "Commander, I hope our methods weren't too aggressive for your tastes," Brooks said diplomatically. "We fight to win, not to look civilized." "Yes, we've learned that," Zethkar replied. "The Coalition Council has prepared a formal offer for your consideration." In the main conference room, Brooks found herself facing the leaders of 12 different species. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the kind of nervous energy that comes after a close call with something dangerous. Captain Veltos spoke first, his energy form crackling with anxiety. "Admiral, the Coalition offers humanity a permanent seat on our military council, full membership with voting rights on all defensive matters." Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Defensive matters? What about offensive operations?" The alien leaders exchanged glances. Commander Hasrak rustled her leaves nervously. "Admiral, we understand that your species has different approaches to warfare. We're hoping you can help us develop more effective defensive strategies." "You mean you want us to teach you how to fight like humans?" Brooks said bluntly. Dr. Kethen leaned forward. "Your species has capabilities we never imagined. The ability to survive in hostile environments, to adapt tactics instantly, to think like predators. These skills could revolutionize Coalition defense." Brooks smiled, and several aliens visibly tensed. "Doctor, we're not just offering defense. We're offering protection. There's a difference." Over the following months, human military advisors spread throughout Coalition space. Captain Ryan Mitchell was promoted to Coalition Strategic Command, working directly with alien fleet commanders. His first order changed everything. "From now on, we don't wait for enemies to attack us," Mitchell announced during a strategy meeting. "We find threats early and eliminate them before they become problems." The concept of preventive warfare was revolutionary to species that had always waited to be attacked before responding. But the results spoke for themselves. 3 separate pirate organizations surrendered after receiving visits from human reconnaissance ships. A slave trading empire dissolved overnight when human Marines appeared in their territory. Colonel Jake Harrison established the first integrated human-alien military training facility on a moon near Coalition headquarters. The program was voluntary, but every species sent their best soldiers to learn from the Deathworlders. Lieutenant Kevin Barnes found himself teaching hand-to-hand combat to a class of confused aliens. "Okay, everyone, the first rule of fighting is simple," he explained to his mixed species students. "There are no rules. If someone's trying to kill you, you do whatever it takes to kill them first." A young Luxani officer raised a glowing appendage. "But Instructor Barnes, what about honor in combat? What about fighting fairly?" Barnes stared at him for a moment, then started laughing. "Kid, you know what's honorable? Going home alive to your family? You know what's fair? Making sure the bad guys don't get to hurt innocent people." The cultural exchange program worked both ways. Dr. Amanda Phillips found herself studying alien psychology, trying to understand how species could evolve without developing aggressive instincts. "It's fascinating," she reported to Admiral Brooks. "Most of these species developed on worlds with abundant resources and few natural predators. They learned cooperation because competition wasn't necessary for survival. And we learned competition because cooperation wasn't enough," Brooks replied. "Earth made us fight for everything." The most significant change came when Sergeant Major Patricia Coleman was asked to establish a new Coalition rapid response force. Instead of the careful defensive strategies the aliens were used to, Coleman created strike teams designed to end threats quickly and permanently. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez, "the new teams are showing incredible effectiveness. Response times are down by 70%, and conflict resolution rates are up by 90%. "What's the secret?" Brooks asked. "Simple," Coleman explained. "We don't negotiate with threats, we eliminate them." The galaxy's criminal organizations learned quickly that the rules had changed. Where they once faced predictable Coalition responses, they now encountered human-trained strike forces that fought without mercy or hesitation. But perhaps the most important change was in how the Coalition viewed itself. Instead of a defensive, Alliance waiting for the next crisis, they became protectors of galactic peace. The presence of human military advisors gave them confidence they had never possessed. Commander Zethkar stood in his office looking out at the stars. Admiral Brooks joined him, watching the peaceful void of space. "Admiral," Zethkar said quietly, "I must admit something. When we first called for help, we expected another desperate species willing to throw ships at an impossible problem. And instead you got apex predators," Brooks replied. "Yes, and now I understand why your species succeeded where others failed. You don't just fight to survive, you fight to win." Brooks nodded. "Commander, Earth taught us that the universe is a dangerous place. The only way to protect what you love is to be more dangerous than anything that threatens it." A year later, the transformation was complete. The coalition had evolved from a loose defensive alliance into a powerful force for galactic stability. Human-trained forces patrolled trade routes, human-designed strategies protected colony worlds, and human military doctrine had become the standard throughout Allied space. The galaxy had asked for reinforcements and received Deathworlders. But what they discovered was something more valuable than just effective soldiers. They had found guardians who understood that true peace could only exist when good people were willing to be absolutely ruthless in protecting it. The humans had taken their place not as conquerors, but as the galaxy's apex predators. And under their protection, civilization flourished like never before. The universe was still dangerous, but now it knew that somewhere among the stars, the most dangerous predators of all stood guard over the innocent. The age of defensive warfare was over. The age of the Deathworld Guardians had begun,